All right, welcome everyone. Today is Wednesday, the 13th of July, 2022, and this is the Cluster API community meeting. Cluster API is a sub-project of the Kubernetes SIG cluster lifecycle, and as such, we are following the Kubernetes SIG's conduct policy, which basically is, treat everyone as you would expect to be treated. Hopefully that's kindly, and please raise your hand if you'd like to contribute to the conversation. So with that, let's get into the meeting. At the beginning of our meetings, we usually take some time to welcome new attendees. So if anyone would like to say hi and introduce yourself, please feel free to unmute your mic and do so.
Sure, I'll say hi real quick. I'm Mike Tugeron. I'm with Adobe. We're doing a POC right now of CAPI and CAPZ for running the AKS clusters. We're currently running on Azure with just plain VMs, and we're looking to migrate our VMs to AKS, and we're hoping to be able to use CAPI and CAPZ to do that. So pretty major architectural shift for us, and we're really excited about it. So I'm going to start attending these in the CAPZ meetings to just be more involved in the community and learn more about it.
That is super exciting. Welcome aboard, Mike. Anyone else out there want to say hello? Maybe this is your first time. All right, I am not seeing any other activity, so let's move on to the open proposal readouts. Is there anyone who would like to make a comment on one of the open proposals that we have? Yeah, Guillermo, please go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on the CRS reconcile mode, the last one there. I know we've talked about this multiple times from different angles. So now we have it in a PR. I'm just looking for feedback. Fabrizio has been helping, so thanks for that. I'm looking for feedback either on favor of moving forward with these or against, and then just waiting for the add-ons project that we're working on that is clearly the long-term solution. So yeah, if you're interested in the topic and you wouldn't mind going to the PR and leaving your feedback, definitely appreciate it.
Awesome, thank you, Guillermo. Jonathan, go ahead.
Yeah, so I am excited to announce that we have opened a draft PR for the proposal of the add-ons orchestration project. So I will drop the link to the GitHub PR in chat and in the meeting notes, and we would really appreciate some feedback if anyone has some time.
Awesome, that is super exciting. Cecile, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. I just had a question for Guillermo real quick. I'm just curious for the CRS reconcile, is the motivation mainly to have like a quick solution just because it's already like we have something working? Or are you also interested long-term in having some solution that doesn't rely on package managers at all and it's kind of like the manual apply?
Yeah, great question. My motivation is a quick solution that we can implement, in a few days or a week until the long-term solution, which is the add-on proposals that Jonathan was mentioning. So I do firmly believe that that proposal should be the long-term, but this is more a short-term solution until that's ready.
Got it, thanks.
All right, cool, thank you. Any other comments on any of the open proposals? All right, then let's move along to the discussion topics. And it looks like Stefan is up first with a PR about the cluster cache tracker. Take it away, Stefan.
Yep. Okay, some context. Today, when one of our controllers communicates with workload clusters, it creates a client with the so-called cluster cache tracker. Cluster cache tracker usually just reads the kubeconfig secret in a management cluster and then creates a control runtime client from that. What this PR essentially does is it optimizes that. for the management cluster. So when the management cluster wants to manage itself as a workload cluster, it doesn't really have to go through the server, which is in the kubeconfig. So it doesn't really have to communicate with the API server, with the load balancer in front of that, et cetera, et cetera. It can just communicate with the in-cluster config, with the local API server, basically. And this PR changes that essentially. So it optimizes that when a cluster cache tracker or when a controller wants to actually talk just to the current cluster, then it just uses the local Kubernetes default SVC instead of going through the regular API server endpoint. We had one issue in CAPC. I think if you have a CAPC self-hosted cluster, then there's some hairpinning issue when the controller runs on control plane nodes that it sometimes can talk to the external API server. I'm not sure if I repeat that correctly, but there's an issue for it. So essentially, we're looking for feedback, and it would be great if someone can test that in something which is not just CAPD, ideally in CAPC. We don't want to put it into 1.2.0, but we were thinking about putting it into the next patch releases for 1.2 and 1.1. Of course, only if we get it verified correctly, and it's fine. Yep, that's it, basically. Everything in the linked issues. If you have more questions, just ask in Slack or somewhere.
Okay, cool. So it sounds like looking for a little bit of feedback on this one, and especially if someone could test it with CAPZ, those are appreciated comments. Does anyone have questions about this? All right, I am not seeing any hands going up, so thank you, Stefan. Shyam, you have the next topic with a discussion of a link here.
Yep. Just give me 1 second, please.
Yeah, no worries.
Anna, yeah, okay. So I think some of you know the problem. So the problem is if you use cluster class and you have a list in the spec, when the list is reconciled, it actually overrides the changes, right? So imagine, so in AWS cluster there are subnets, right? If you define a subnet in your cluster class and say the subnet has this name and this is the CIDR, and then kappa, when the kappa, when it runs, it actually appends ID onto it, right? The ID field onto the subnet. But then when the cluster topology reconciler reconciles it, it actually overrides the changes in kappa. So the ID field is removed, right? That's and the similar thing is happening in cluster paper for OCI, which actually I'm working on. We have a couple of solutions. We can ask customers to always define a unique, this ID in the unique, key in the list. For example, in OCI, you can define a name for the subnet. In AWS, there is no name. You can just use ID. And in CAPZ also, you can define a name which is unique, right? But there are cases where, like in case of cluster paper for OCI, there are cases where you can define only a name and the ID will be generated, or you can specify ID, right? So it's like, we are really not sure what is, if we get a uniform solution which will work across all the cloud providers, right? So basically the problem is that if you have a list and the list is reconciled both in the provider specific reconciler as well as the topology reconciler, there will be problems.
Okay, I am not super familiar with this part of the cluster class stuff, but is there anyone here who would like to make a comment on this or maybe has a little more information?
Yeah, I mean, the Kappa team actually tried to have a workaround and we couldn't work around. So we have one solution, which if community agrees, we can go ahead with that. I mean, of course, but yeah, I mean,
I guess,
I
is
can,
there a PR associated with the solution that you have put together so far?
the PR is actually specific in OCI, the cluster API provider for OCI, right? So in the solution is that, okay, if you can just open that AWS thing, AWS page, right? If you have a subnet, right? If you are defining it in cluster class, you need to give a name. In case of OCI, you need to give a name which is unique, right? In case of CapZ also, it is unique. So name is unique, right? So if you are defining a subnet inside cluster class, you need to give a unique ID for it or unique key for it. And in case of both CapZ and CapOCI, it's a name, right? So if you give the name, that's fine. But if you want to use an external subnet in which only ID is present, you cannot define it in the cluster class as a this as a topology. What you have to give is you have to provide it as a variable from outside. You understand, right? So then the topology reconcile will not reconcile it because it's only a variable. It's just So if you want to use an external architecture, external infrastructure, where for in this case ID, or if you just pass it as a variable, and it will not set it as a topology basically. So these are the two flavors that customers can use.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. I guess the question is, does this issue cover it, or should we? It sounds like we should have a new issue to cover what you found, just so that we could actually capture it in a separate place. Is that?
There is a separate ticket in Kappa for this. Let me just see one second. It's there in that thread. Just give me 1 second.
I see Fabrizio has his hand up while we're looking for the link here. Do you want to go ahead, Fabrizio?
If Shyam has finished, yes, I can go.
Yeah, I'm finished. I'm just pinging you the ticket. It's 3528. Cluster API provider in AWS 3528 issue number. I'm just pinging the Zoom chat.
Okay, so two comments from my side. One is that with the latest change, cluster class now basically use what a cluster API offers. So we align to basically what is the Kubernetes solution for handling two controllers or a set of different people or things authoring the same Kubernetes object. So at this point, we basically removed all the custom things that there was in the previous release. So point number one. Point number two is that the rule from Kubernetes, let me say, server-side apply are quite simple. If you want that a list is co-authored, basically you need an identifier, a unique identifier that could be composed by a single field or by a set of fields. Say that the problem is complex. I did not have time to look at the thread about OCI because looking things in Slack is not easy. I discussed this with Winnie and Yassine a couple of times ago, and it seemed, and the solution proposal seemed to agree. Now I have to catch up with Winnie again. What I'm advocating for is that Of course, I'm happy to help to jump in some Zoom discussion to try to solve together this problem. I am advocating for a solution that we try to apply consistency across providers, so we make the life of our user a little bit easier. So yeah,
I
that's
agree.
my only point.
Yeah, I completely agree. The only concern is, I mean, the way network is defined in the cloud providers are different. Like, for example, Azure, they don't have an ID concept. They just have a name, and name is unique. OCI has both ID and name. The way network is defined in Kappa is there is no name. There is only ID. So there is a bit of, you know, the way the network is defined is different. Is actually exaggerating the problem a little bit.
Yeah, I understand. At the same time, it's kind of hard to follow. We have to find a way which is a better way, which is not a Slack thread. It could be a spreadsheet, it could be a document to surface a compare difference, because otherwise I really struggle to follow the problem or of the nuances. We have basically to formulate the problem and rally together to find a solution.
Yeah, I mean, the problem actually is not just topology reconciler. The ID problem, the ID solution, which was discussed in Kappa, right? It fails in the case where a user applies updates across a class. So that is the main concern. It's like the both ways. It's the solution is not working both ways.
So I guess Shyam, at this point, it's sounding like this is kind of a complicated issue and it's got a lot of details.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to put together like a Google Doc or something that you
Sure.
can share with the community that kind of describes what the problem is and kind of spells out the details? And then I think as a group, we could probably look at it and start to think about, is there a solution that would apply to every provider? Because it sounds like some of the details right now are slightly confusing.
Yeah, sure. I can do that.
Awesome. That would be great. And then, you know, bring the doc back, you know, when you're ready. And I guess we can start to look at it more asynchronously and maybe come up with some ideas, you know, see if there's a way to have an idea that could be like, it could work for all the providers. It sounds like from what you're saying, each provider has slightly different details about the way the subnets are defined. So we might not be able to have like a common solution for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Thank you so much. Does anyone else have any comments or questions about this topic? All right, I'm not seeing any hands go up. So it looks like the next topic is mine. I've been looking at doing another release of CapK, the Kubernetes client. And unfortunately, I've been having some trouble getting pickup on it. We did add some more reviewers to the project, but it's been about a month now. I've been trying to get this PR merged, which kind of makes it so that you can use CapK the way it's described, you know, the way the other clients are used, essentially, you know, being able to run just the cluster init commands to do it. And then I've also got an issue opened right now to get a 4.0 release, because we added a big feature and we've also got some fixes up for the instructions. So I'm kind of reaching out to the community here because I've been having trouble getting contact with the other KubeMark maintainers. And I just wondered if anyone here had maybe a suggestion or maybe some ideas on how we could kind of push this forward. And I guess if nobody has any thoughts, then I'll keep poking in Slack. Has anyone run into this before with kind of like some of the smaller providers where you don't necessarily like have enough people to review the PRs? Like, would it be okay to, you know, I mean, I hate to switch the prior config to allow one person to approve things, but you know, unless there are people here who would like to work on KubeMark, I'm not sure how we go forward at this point.
Have you tried shame, Mike? I don't know exactly who to direct that psychological warfare at, but sometimes that can work.
Yeah, I mean, I'm terrible at those tactics. I could try. That's a good suggestion. Okay, I mean, if nobody else has any thoughts, I'll just keep plodding along and see what we can do here. The next topic is Jonathan with a link to an open proposal for add-on orchestration. You want to take it away, Jonathan?
Oh, that was the announcement I made earlier for the proposal. I just put the link in the
Oh, cool.
bottom so people could find it easily.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And yeah, all right, we'll come back around to that. Okay, so Fabrizio, you've got a quick update on release 1.2.0.
Okay, so yeah, we gave an update last week. We cut a release on Monday. As a for what regards me, Stefan and the other colleagues working on this release, we are really testing, doing as much test as you can, refining a little of refinement in the docs, but basically we consider the release. What we have for now, we don't have evidence of problem, so we still looking as a target date for the release next Monday. And yeah, and that's all. So if someone has feedback or concern, please reach out.
Okay, cool. So I guess like barring anything else, we'll have a new release next Monday, it sounds like. Okay, so that's the end of our regular schedule here. We're just going to go to the provider updates. Jack, you've got an update about CapZ.
Yeah, just a real quick announcement about 1.4.0. I was reviewing the release page to look for one or two interesting things to announce, and there's actually just a lot of great things in this release. So I won't just read through them all, but there they are. Thank you, Mike. So thanks to Cecile for doing the grunt work on this and for all of the contributors. There's a lot of people on that page right there. So yeah, 1.4.0.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you to all the contributors. Yeah, it looks like you really packed a lot into the 1.4.0 release there. Alrighty, well, that is the end of our planned schedule here. Does anyone have any ad hoc topics or anything they'd like to say before we go? Any questions, comments? People need any help or anything? All right, I'm not seeing any hands go up. So in 3, 2, 1. All right. That's the end of the meeting for this week. Thanks everyone for coming out. And I guess we'll see you next week.